like you've been told, only the best for me. Pure as gold, you've got a hold on me, feeding my revelry, my revelry. I've been running out of time to be wasted. Now I'm running out of air. You're running on my mind. Now I'm awakened, awakened. I've been looking for the light. I'm holding on. I'm trying to lose the fear. It's running on my mind. It's running on my mind. Stay with me tonight. We can make it better. Just you and I all night. We can make it better. I've been running out of time to be wasted. Now I'm running out of air. You're running on my mind. Now I'm awakened, awakened. I've been looking for the light. I'm holding on. I'm trying to lose the fear. It's running on my mind. It's running on my mind. Running on my I've been running out of time to be wasted. Now I'm running out of air. You're running on my mind. Now I'm awakened, awakened. I've been looking for the light. I'm holding on. I'm trying to lose the fear. It's running on my mind. It's running on my mind. Stay with me tonight. We can make it better. Just you and I all night. We can make it
Check 1 2 1 2. Oh, camera glitch. Let's try resetting that. Every once in a while, this guy screws up for me. There we go. How goes it, everyone? Hit done there. There we go. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to another stream where I inevitably have to turn down my music in my headphones. There. We'll see if I turn it back up once I get to editing. Welcome to another chill and chat photo editing stream. Eventually I'll stop doing photo editing, but for now it's a lot of fun in my opinion. So today we have a couple of photos lined up, and then I have a few just in case we get through them too quickly. So for those who do find my stream through my social media and all that, friends of mine in real life, you'll know that I'm editing 2 photos today. The first is going to be of a cute little, let's see if I can pop it up. Yep, there we go. Cute little chipmunk that I shot at the Royal Botanical Gardens. And then once we get through that one, I'm going to try a couple of different techniques on that one, but it'll be a pretty simple edit. I'm going to switch up to a photo of some mushrooms that I also shot. These I shot at Dundurn Castle, funny enough. So those are my lined up photos for the day. We'll see if I don't have anything else to edit once we're all done with this. So far I've had Layla shout out in the chat. How's it going? It's been a week already. Time flies when you're busy as all hell, that's for sure. How are we all dealing with this last week? Well, I wait on any sort of... Well, thank you. I figure animal photos, cute flowers, that kind of stuff, that always sells. They always look good from my camera. So I thought I'd roll with it. Let's in fact switch over to my display. You did your first stream today. What did you stream? Let's throw on my other earplug. Now I have to turn up my music so I can actually hear it. There we go. Yeah, please let me know what you streamed. I'm very curious. In the meantime, I'm going to just boot up this photo in Adobe Bridge and do a couple of little quick edits to it in Camera Raw. Nothing crazy. Let me get my actual tablet going. So I'm just going to adjust the exposure slightly. Bring it down. Bring our contrast up a little bit. Same with our highlights. Bring out more color on our cute little chipmunk. I'll do the same with whites and then bring down my blacks a little bit to give us more contrast. Nothing crazy. We're just starting off with a nice solid canvas, and then we'll really throw some changes onto this to really highlight it. I'm not going to play with texture, clarity, dehaze. I will bring down our color very slightly in vibrance, just so that we can abuse it a little bit more later. Detail, HSL, split toning. Yeah, nothing here I'm going to muck with for now. So I'll open up my image. No worries. So, you probably missed my question. What did you stream today? Also, did not realize you're in the UK. Okay, let's get this on the road. I'm going to start, as per always, with a curves adjustment layer. And I'm going to create some... Actually, I'll start with my highlights a little bit. Really push that up a little bit. Of course, this isn't our final product. Like always, I'm going to play with my masking so that we can highlight specific areas we want to highlight. So I've got my brush open. I'm going to set it to white. Make it a tad larger. And I'm going to make sure this is a opacity flow soft round. That way I can really play with it on my tablet. Let's see, Layla just chatting, check if it worked. Might do ukulele or even photo edits in the future. Ukulele, good call. Funny enough, I was actually just in yesterday, out of nowhere. A few of my friends decided to do a big group, like a big group chat on Zoom, all hanging out, having a couple drinks, and everyone broke out. Everyone who had instruments broke out their instruments, started playing. We had a musician in the group, and my friend Eric likes to rap, and I forget who broke out the ukulele, but someone broke it out. It was a lot of fun. We all sang Country Road, West Virginia. Not from the new Fallout game, but popularized by it. But that's awesome to hear. I'm glad you're streaming. How did it go? Like everything works. You got the hardware all set up for it. For the record, for those curious, I'm basically just going over the highlights or the brighter parts of this chipmunk and lightening them up by adjusting our mask on him. So bring his ear up a little bit. The key to this kind of thing is we take very small edits and throw them all together to really bring out a dynamic shot on this guy, a lot of depth. Okay, well, thanks, Layla. So basically what I'm doing is our curves layer lets us adjust exposure. So when I pop it up, I've got plenty of time to explain. So when I pop it up, we have, let me move my big head out of the way. Yeah, bottom corner is pretty safe. When we pop it up, we have this big, move to my mouse for this. When I pop it up, we have this graph, and this graph is our exposure, right? So on the far side, we have our whites. On the right side, we have our whites. On the left side, we have our blacks. And then, depending where they are for height, is a different level of brightness. So what I'm doing is I drew a point and drew that up toward the brighter side of things, the brighter side of this diagonal line, to create a layer that is altogether brighter than our original. If I do that. Then I threw a mask on it and inverted it by pressing Control-I to make everything back to its usual self. But then everything I draw on this little mask here in white is brighter. So I'm brightening up, again, these little highlights. And I'll do the same thing for our midtones and the same thing for our shadows. And we'll kind of see if I can pull some depth out of this chipmunk, or more than was already there. So on that, I'm going to continue a little bit with our highlights. Nothing too crazy. I'm really just accentuating what's already there. And it's not so much about what parts of the squirrel are bright, it's more about what parts of the squirrel are being caught by sunlight. So like this edge of his ear. Here. I did brighten these up, of course. He needs a cute little face. There we go, that's probably good. Let's do his tail slightly. There we go. So when I zoom out a little bit, we can turn that layer on and off, and we see that he's just, again, given a bit of depth. What I might do at the end is blur it a little so it doesn't look so painted on. We'll see how it goes. So next up, I'm going to create another adjustment layer, curves, do the same thing except the opposite. Let's go for some shadows. Then, I don't know what, adjustments needs to go above layers. So with that mask selected, Control-I to turn it inverse. And then I can start painting on some shadows. Layla, I don't have Photoshop, so I only know really basic stuff. I basically use apps like Visco. That only lets you edit stuff like saturation, contrast. Sorry, it sounds so basic. No worries. I'm lucky enough that I have gotten around to learning all these things. I'm in a position where I can pay for like the entire Adobe suite and all that. Not everyone's in the same position. And there's a lot to be learned from the free programs that are out there too. That's what I worked on, God, for years and years. And that's what a lot of people work on. I've just slowly pieced everything together so so that I can do what I'm doing now. Yeah, I'm on my white tool. But one I recommend, it's not so much for photo editing, but I've been recommending it to my students recently, is a program called Canva. It's a completely online program. It's all on your browser, but it's really good for designing graphics. Like if you needed to design a poster or a card. But I've been showing my students how we can even design things like Instagram story templates on Canva and then import them to our phones to really kind of bump up our content. But yeah, funny enough, I had that class earlier today. Didn't teach them that, I'd already taught them that. But I ran into the accidental mistake of long story short, I forgot that I had to start teaching them new content today, so I had to kind of vamp. But it actually turned out pretty well, I think. It's hard to tell with online classes when you can't really see or interact with people directly. There we go. Get all in here. Had a thing pop up. If I got Photoshop, I would just spend like a whole week fidgeting with all the cool features. Yeah, that's the cool thing about Photoshop. And even like I know how to do basic edits on a photo as far as Photoshop goes. But there's a lot of things I don't know. There's a lot of skills that I have to look for information on, and I'll find a cool new feature that suddenly changes my entire perspective on editing a photo. Like for example, let's see if I can play with this one. First, let's see. Yeah, those shadows aren't too bad. Nice and subtle. So I'll leave them for now. I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to go up to Select, Color Range. And now everything's gone black, except that green stuff up top. So I have two options here. I can either sample colors or I can choose specific settings like yellows or reds. What this is going to do is when I press OK, it's going to select all the colors within the spectrum that I want to affect. So right now I'm going to move the text box over and I'm going to go to sampled colors. I'm going to reset my eyedropper to my chipmunk. I'm going to then set it to the plus eyedropper, the add to sample, and start kind of fleshing out those browns and tans that make up this chipmunk. That's probably good. I'm not going to push it too much. Then when I hit OK, well, let's adjust the fuzziness a bit. There we go. When I hit OK, it selects everything that's within that color spectrum that I was just adjusting. And if I use that selection with a hue and saturation layer, it should have. Yep. So my hue and saturation layer only affects that stuff that I was adjusting. Got a quick comment. So did you teach in like a college or has it always been online? Do your students ever see your streams? So yes, I'll walk you through this real quick while I'm adjusting the color on this guy. So long story short, I graduated from my college almost a year ago now, last June. And very quickly they reached out to me and said, hey Chris, do you want to teach a class? It was a class for a program called City School. And the cool thing about this program was I was teaching story 1 and 2, so basic storytelling within the scope of journalism. And so this program is actually, whoa, that's funky squirrel colors. I don't want that. This program was actually a free program for people in my community, Hamilton, who don't necessarily have access to college. People who maybe didn't graduate high school, people who don't have the money to go to college. And I fell in love with it immediately. My class was awesome. It was a small class, but really, really awesome people. And from there, they brought me in to teach more classes this semester. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. So I came in for more classes this semester. I was teaching in a class just like any other instructor. And then COVID hit. And so I had to figure out how I'm going to offer my class digitally. And one of my classes, particularly audio video editing, I couldn't just put out PowerPoints, right? I have to actually show my students how to do some of the techniques, similar to what I'm doing right now with photo editing. And so, yeah, that's a good adjustment. I like that. And so that kind of created this live stream thing that I'm doing now. And I've just decided, well, while COVID's going on and while we're all in this format anyway, I'll just teach my other classes on here, like the one you popped in on earlier. And so I already had plans to do something like this, like what I'm doing now, the photo editing, a while ago, as like a supplemental to my classes if I continued to teach them. This just kind of pushed everything a bit ahead of schedule. So for the record, I've now switched to my mask view so I can see my mask in black and white. And I'm just going to adjust the dirt behind this guy so that it doesn't also turn orange like I made him. So yeah, it just kind of pushed up my plans a bit earlier than expected. But me doing this live stream now is me trying to build something more than just the online learning that I offer through the college. I want something of my own that's not just me as a professor, but something that's me as someone who likes to work with media. So as I get closer to this guy, I'm pressing less on my tablet so that my brush isn't quite so solid, because I don't want to adjust any color on him. I just want to kind of feather the color that's around him on the dirt. So I hope that answered your question. I tend to ramble at times. There we go. This stream has also made me acutely aware of how much I say the word But hey, it's how I talk. Fix that. Because I accidentally colored over his tail. There we go. I'll leave some of the orange in the dirt in front of him, just because I actually kind of like the look of it. Just go over lightly so it's not so obvious. And I'll deal with this one guy right here. There we go. I should name the chipmunk. What do you think I should name the chipmunk? Because I'll do something lame like Chippy, and like it's just so uninspired. So now that I adjusted that mask while looking at it in this masking mode, I'm going to go back and see what I need to adjust in my normal mode. So what I'm actually thinking I'm going to do, now that I've added a lot of orange to him, I'm finding that his shadow is a tad too orange. There it is again. So what I'm going to do is the exact same option I had before, where I'm going to select, or I'm going to make a new layer. Actually, it didn't seem to adjust it, so I'm going to delete those two layers. I'm going to go select, color range, and now with my eyedropper tool, select, come on. There we go. Just want to select that deep orange that's around his shadow and on top of his head. I'll leave the fuzziness rather low. Now what's cool about this is I'll select everything. Did it grab anything? No, everything's a bit too muddy. So we'll work a different way. A basic human name like Jonathan. Jonathan's good. Maybe Todd. I'm thinking Todd with 2 Ds. Todd the Chipmunk. Yeah. Unless there are any objections, I think Todd's a good name. So what I'm going to do now is make another adjustment layer, hue and saturation. And I'm just going to adjust it so that the dirt around this guy, around Todd, isn't quite so orange. I have to be careful. I'm not making the world's biggest adjustment here. Let's bring the saturation down a little bit. And I won't worry about darkening it too much. So now if we back out of that, we turn the layer on and off. It's a very subtle difference, but it makes me happy. So I'm going to leave that layer on. I'm going to now I'll invert the layer. Had to figure out where I was for a second. Now I'm going to draw on with white just over this dirt that's beneath Todd. I can also apply it to anything that's got a bit of color that I don't want to deal with. So over here, we'll apply it. And we don't want to be too heavy-handed with this. Get rid of a bit of the green here, a bit of the brown there. Zoom out a tad. Okay, I'm just going to switch to my mask mode by holding Alt and clicking on that, just to see what I'm affecting. And if we turn it on and off, yeah, I don't even think I need to blend that all that much. It's not obvious enough to require blending. So we'll just leave it as is. So now let's so now let's do one more curves layer, which I had stopped doing because of the hue and saturation layers. I'm just going to create a curves adjustment layer. And this one I'm bringing up, again, a tad more than the highlights. Because again, the highlights are mostly affecting the highlights. In this, I really want to start to bring up my midtones. So let's invert. There we go. And then we're back to drawing in the parts we want affected. I'll make my brush a tad smaller. For some reason I thought chipmunk tails looked like squirrel tails. No, it's not exactly something I ponder on a regular basis, but I suppose they don't. All I know is they're really cute. Aside from this photo, which is a nice close-up I got of Todd, I managed to get some really nice photos of my friends actually feeding the chipmunks and petting them. Because at the RBG, the botanical gardens, they're so used to humans that they'll approach pretty easily. Which, like, not the best, but at least they're being taken care of. So I'm trying not to affect our highlights too much. I'm trying to bring out more of the richness in some of these midtones here. Let's try there. I definitely brought a bit out on his forehead there. the middle of his ear. And I'll see what I can bring out on the inside of his ear here. At the very least, I'm bringing out some detail. There we go. Oh yeah, you say squirrel as one syllable. That's so cool. British. Squirrel? No. I'm not see, the problem is I also know German, and I'm getting the German pronunciation of the English word squirrel mixed up in my head, which is to say a mess of syllables that the Germans can't comprehend, and I love it. It makes me laugh every time I hear a German say that word. Let's see how... Yeah, see, that brought out so much on this guy, on Todd's forehead here. So if I quick group all these, Control G. We took what was a already nice photo of a chipmunk, of Todd, but we really started to add some depth to it. And really, I don't think there's too much to adjust. I might add a bit more shadow just on this kind of underlayer, like where his belly is, right under his chin, the actual shadow on the ground. I might give that some more depth before we move into the background. So, hell, let's do it. I as in ink. Squirrel. Oh yes, okay, there we go. I now know of what you, or to what you refer. There we go. So what I'm doing here, instead of pulling down our midtones, I shouldn't actually do that. I just pulled down our shadows very, very, very slightly, which means that if I do paint over something, it's not going to be too much of a difference unless it's an actual shadow. So I'll close that. And like always, invert the layer, and then we start drawing. I think we pronounce our R's more than you guys. Yes. Yeah, it's hard to keep track of accents, that's for sure. It's also weird to think that I have an accent. But hey, that's a thing. I understand I have an accent compared to British English. It's compared to American English. I don't understand how there's a difference. For the most part, till I say a boot. There we go. So I'm going to go lightly over just the bottom edge of Todd. I just want to imply a bit more shadow. So same in here. We lose a bit of detail on him, but what we gain is some more contrast in our photo as a whole. Pulls him off the background a little bit. So I'm going lightly so I don't cover over that bit of highlight there. Just light little strokes. Bit more on his toes. Literally everything that touches shadow, I'm just bringing down one slight adjustment. Your accent is so distinct. If you came to England with that accent, people would think you were so cool. No Americans ever come to England, so it's rare. Well, I am Canadian, but beyond that, I've actually been to England. I went to, adjustment. Quite a few years back now, stayed in London for about a week. It was a lot of fun. I checked out Camden, did all the normal tourist shit, Westminster and Globe Theatre and the Tate Museum. But it was a lot of fun. I loved London the moment I got there. What I'm not liking, the only thing I'm not loving about this adjustment so far, before I zoom out and take a look, is I'm not loving what I did right here. Oh, sorry. You don't have to be sorry. It's my job as a Canadian to be sorry. Yeah, I'm not loving that one shadow I'm putting here, so I'm going to remove it by switching my brush to black and just painting back over it. It just brought out a bit too much red in Todd. But aside from that, I'll add a bit more on his nose. Canada's pretty awesome. Like, well, right now no one can come to Canada, of course. But I highly, highly recommend it. I haven't been out to the West Coast. I haven't been out to British Columbia or Alberta or anything like that. But speaking for the East Coast, the Maritimes, and Ontario, and Quebec, it's pretty awesome. The Maritimes, the climate's very similar to Britain. And the people are some of the most friendly people I've ever met. Layla, gotta go for a bit. Probably be back eventually. Maybe see ya. Have a good one if I don't see ya again. Oh, there we go. Found my mouse. Real quick, have another swig. So, getting back to it, would help if I were on the right screen. There we go. Yeah, Canada's awesome. I love traveling. Myself and a few friends were planning on going to New Brunswick this summer. Well, those plans turned out how they turned out, what with everything going on, but it's a lot of fun to travel. Which tends to be, happens to be one of my favorite hobbies. So we've got a lot of dynamic shading to our squirrel. Really kind of pulling him off the background. No, cancel. Yeah, we've added a lot of depth to Todd here. What I'm going to do now is give us a little bit more depth to our background. I'm not going to do anything too crazy. I'm essentially going to add some contrast to the far background and pull some contrast out of the dirt to give us kind of a layering effect. Excuse me. So what I'm going to do first of all is rename group 1. There we go. I'll call it Todd. Just so that I don't adjust anything there without meaning to. The next thing I'm going to do yet another curves adjustment layer. What I'm going to do is create an S-curve. That's a bit too extreme. With my S-curve, I'm going to pull my highlights and shadows a little bit more. I think I'll actually leave my shadows and bring up some of the highlights. You know what? Nix that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to delete all my points. There we go. Except my highlights. I'm going to bring my highlights nice and high. There we go. I'm then going to invert my selection and actually real quick draw a rectangle in white. Fill it with white. Weird, my selection's off. There we go. Instead of that, I'll use my selection tool. Just map out that guy. And with the fill bucket, fill it with white. There we go. That's more what I was looking for. That way I don't have to just pencil in all the little details on that guy. I can just kind of use an open fill. So going back to my selection tool, I'll actually go to the move tool. Angle it slightly. Undo. Undo. There we go. I'll deselect. Then I'll go into my, instead of normal selection, I'll go into my lasso tool. And just quick draw a loop around any other area I want to affect. Do the same thing with the white. There we go. Now we go back to our brush. I'm going to switch to black before anything. And I'm going to just pencil over or brush over the edge of that white area, just so it doesn't look quite so harsh. There we go. There. See a bit. So now we've brightened up almost all the trees without messing with anything else. I'm going to switch back to white and just clean up these lower edges. I don't like the particularly dark spots down here. So what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to pull my mask a lot lower into the dirt, and then I'll go back over it to blend it with the dirt rather than blending it with the trees. What this does, let me just pull that up. What that does is lets me, I'll have to fix that. That's actually not too bad. What that does is let me keep the trees brighter, but still have it so that it doesn't feel too standoutish. Doesn't pop off the screen too much. There we go. The other thing I want to adjust, I'm loving the green, I'm not loving the yellow in the background. Not as much as it exists. That yellow splotch really draws my eye away from Todd, which is what happens. The brighter part of your photo is almost always going to draw your eye, especially because he's smack dab in the middle. There's no leading lines to him. There's no, he's not even on the rule of thirds, which we'll deal with when I crop the photo. So what I'm going to do is, how am I going to deal with this? What I'll first do is go to select, making sure that, there we go. Select, color range. Then I'm going to choose my yellows. Cancel, I'm selecting from the wrong layer. I'll select from my background. Select, color range. Now I'll select my yellows. In fact, I'll go with sampled colors. I'll sample up there. Yep, and then I'll use my plus. There we go. That grabs the majority of it pretty smoothly. So I'll hit OK there. Then I'm going to make a new adjustment layer with that selection. I want hue and saturation. And good, that popped up top. So then I go to my adjustments. I popped that off. Oh well, I'll deal with that in a moment. Then I'm going to adjust it so everything's a tad more green, not quite so yellow. I won't worry about my lightness too much. There we go. So that's a good start. What I'll do now is move my properties tab back. And then in my layer, I'll go to my mask. Same thing as always, which is 90% of what I do on this app or on this program is just remasking. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a hard selection tool just around the ground, around Todd. That should be good. Then I'm going to fill it with the paint bucket, fill it with black. I'll work with that for now. I could refinagle it, but that's good enough. I'll use my brush, nice big brush, just to go over any remaining areas. There we go. I got that sentence out eventually. My goal is to basically not affect everything up top. And that's for good reason. There we go. So, moving our view back. So now we've only affected the trees in the background. Now, what I don't want to do is I don't want to get rid of all the yellow. I just want to adjust this pocket here more than anything. So, just with that tool selected. There we go. Paint over all of this to bring out some more of that yellow. I'll even paint over a little bit here, real lightly. So I don't mind reintroducing it, I just don't want it to be the star of the show. There we go. Then finally, let's do one more layer, a brightness contrast layer. Call it a fair bit of contrast here. And then I don't have any good masks, so I'll just invert and quick draw. This is nothing crazy. I just want to quickly go over and add some contrast to the trees. There we go. Hold out some depth there. And then I'm going to duplicate this. Oh, there we go. I hate when I get dialog boxes in my other screen. There we go. So I'm going to invert that layer. I'm going to change my brightness contrast setting to be low contrast. And then I'm going to paint on this layer some black just over the things I don't want to decontrast. So I don't want to decontrast Todd. We spent a lot of time working on him. I don't want to remove the contrast of everything that's in focus here of this foreground. I'm mostly concerned about this pocket here. Behind Todd. And now if we turn that on. It's nothing groundbreaking, but again, all these edits together make for that. We'll call that background BG. If we look at the original, it's a lot of difference compared to our final piece. There's still a few more things I'm going to do. The last big thing I'm going to do, I've done it before, is I'm going to make a new layer, press Control Alt Shift E to get a stamp visible. So it creates another layer that looks exactly like the one we just saw. With that layer, I'm going to switch everything over to Overlay. I'm going to go up to Filter. I'm going to go to Other and go to High Pass. With that, I'm going to punch it up so that everything's nice and sharp, like real sharp. There. Now I'm going to give it a mask, and I'm going to invert the mask. This is where we get to sharpen up Todd. So I'm switching to my white brush. I'm making it a fair bit smaller. 70 pixels should be good. Yeah. And now I'm just going to quickly go over anything I really want to sharpen up. I can't fix everything. There we go. Like, I can't suddenly make the entire front of his head super sharp in the camera, but I can brighten up little areas to make things pop. So I'm lightly going over his forehead. Anywhere with these fine hairs that are in focus, I'm going to tend to adjust, sharpen up. That'll be what gives us depth. I'm going over the edge of his ear, and then lightly over all this texture on his back because it is in focus. Same with everything down here, these all these fine hairs. We can really pull some detail out of them. I'm not going over these big blotchy areas, like the big blotch of white or big blotch of black, but I am going over anything that separates them. Go over his toes a little bit. There we go. I'm going around his eye. Let's see the before after on this one. Let's zoom out and take a look. Yeah, I like that. Like I said, it's not like we suddenly put everything that was out of focus in focus. We just emphasize it a little bit. The final thing we're going to do is we're going to, well, first we're going to File, Save As, and good, it's in the right folder. So I'm going to name it, we'll call it Todd, and I'm saving as a PSD. That way, if I ever want to come back and make changes, I don't have to worry about a flat image. There's all these layers will be preserved. Next, we need to figure out how we're going to crop the photo. The general rule is we play with a rule of thirds. So whatever we want to focus on, we want to fall on one of these points, or at the very least one of the lines. So I'm thinking we put his head and foot there. Maybe throw him a little bit more. There we go. Let's see how that crops out. I dig it. I think we can work with that. What I'm going to do, I'm going to push him a little bit further over. Just because my eye keeps being drawn to that yellow blotch. Yeah, we can work with that. So, the only other thing I'm going to adjust is I'm going to press Control A, or sorry, go to my layers, press Control A. Go to my layers and select them all because Control A doesn't work as a hotkey for that. And I'm going to right click and click merge or flatten image. So this is when I talked about a flat photo, this is what a flat photo is. There's no different layers I can mess with, it's all just one photo. I'm actually going to undo. I want to see one thing. Okay, yeah, we're good. Yeah. No, we're not. One last thing I'm going to do. I'm going to create one more curves layer. Curves adjustment layer. Going to punch up our highlights. Like a lot. Then I'm going to take a mask on that. Of course, we invert it. I'm going to draw, wrong pen. I'm just going to give Todd a little halo. Nothing huge. And making sure it blends pretty well. I'm just going all around the edge of Todd. Very, very lightly. Just to give him one more layer of depth. I have to be very careful around the darker background areas. It's real easy to unblend. Yeah, that's acceptable to me. So the reason I'm doing that is just I want to give him a little bit more depth. What I am going to do is I'm going to put that underneath our sharpening layer, and I'll delete that random one I created for no reason. Now, unfortunately, this isn't saved in the PSD, but I'll take it. So now we're going to flatten our image. We're going to go to Filter, Camera Raw Filter. Easiest way to do a quick vignette, assuming you don't mind flattening your image. So let's go to Effects, Post-Crop Vignetting. I want my midpoint further in, but my roundness down. Less feather. Yep. And I want to let some highlights through. Let's try increasing the amount a tad. And increasing our feather a tad. There we go, I don't mind that. Yeah, green is useless, no thank you. Actually, I'm going to add just a tad. There we go, just a bit of texture. So that's our finished product. Let me save him. I'm just going to go to first image size. I'm going to change that to 150. And then make sure our height, even easier, we'll go to 75. Make sure our height is 1080. Then go to 150 on a resolution. Yeah, we haven't lost any quality. Again, we have that grain in the background, gives us a bit more texture. That halo I created doesn't appear too much, or at least it wouldn't if you didn't know it existed. Yeah, I'm digging it. The only thing I might change, I might have gotten rid of this little branch here. Tried to blend it with the ground, but I'm not crying over that one. So I'm just going to change my color profile to sRGB, RB, yeah, whatever. File, save as Todd, JPEG. Save. Okay. And I'm just going to save again just to my desktop so it's easy to find later. So on to our next photo. I am thinking, rather than doing our mushroom photo, let's close that one. I had another one I was entertaining the idea of, which is this just landscape, swamp landscape. Or even a group shot. You know what? Just for fun, I'm going to go with this swamp landscape, and I'm going to use it as an HDR. So I select all three photos, I go to Tools, Photoshop, Merge to HDR Pro. So I'm going to take a moment while that all blends out. As for anyone who may be in chat, how's it going? I'm hoping you're learning something from this. Still loading. Still loading because HDR takes forever. Layla, give me a second and I can show you the chipmunk once HDR loads back up. Oh, there's HDR. Let me quick make these adjustments and I'll pull the chipmunk back up. Any ghosts to remove. Yeah, I'll remove ghosts. Tone and ACR. Where did I save that Todd photo? There we go. Here's Todd. So, a big difference from the flatter image before. A bit sharper, a bit more color, a bit more depth to him. And we cropped it down a little bit so he fits better in the frame. So I'm quite happy with how Todd went. So I'm going to minimize him and just get to... Todd is great. Thank you. Where did Camera Raw go? Bear with me a moment. Okay, it's still loading. There we go. So we're going to give a lot of depth to this photo here and get rid of a smudge I had on my camera. So the first thing I'm going to do is just give us a bit more contrast. And let's change it just so that we're not quite so blue, or quite so yellow. There we go. Beyond that, I'm going to say that's okay to start with, and then we'll start playing with some different layers. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here. I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to use I'll use clone stamp. It's on white, so. There we go. I got rid got rid of the smudge. Figured I should start with that. What I'm actually going to do is just merge visible, just so I never have to worry about that smudge again. So now, rather than playing with... Hard to say. I'm going to play with adjustment layers again, just because it's easier and safer to do. So, the entire point of this photo is going to be creating depth, creating all these different layers that build up to the full photo. So the things in the background versus here. I'll draw it on. So if I'm playing with our colors, let's go red. It's very green. Well, it's a nice summertime photo. Makes me miss summer a lot. So we're playing with all sorts of different layers. So we got background here. Pretty much everything that is these dark trees here. Then we've got another layer here, these yellow guys. We've got a little layer here of swamp, and a bigger one of all these cattail. Then we have to deal with this guy here, which is a forward layer, but a lot of shade. And then finally, we've got our foreground here. There's a whole lot to deal with. And we're going to essentially create an adjustment layer for each one of these to bring out a bit more color, a bit more depth to it. So let's turn off this gross writing layer and start with our first curves adjustment layer. Pop up on my other screen. Cancel. So with this curves adjustment layer, I'm going to double click and we'll start by adding some darkness. Let's get rid of that one. We'll just kind of reduce some contrast on these trees in the background. There we go. So we take that, and I'm going to start with a selection tool. Just highlight all the area I want to affect, and we're going to fill with, where is my, there we go. I'm going to fill with black, and then we'll invert the layer. Help if I deselect. Invert. So now I'm just going to go in and clean up all my edges with a paintbrush. So I'm first playing with black and getting rid of some of these hard edges I'm drawing here. Let me get a bigger brush with a bit more weight to it. I'll go 75% hardness. There we go. That'll make a dent in this. And bigger size. Don't need to worry about the sky. The nice part about something that's all white is there aren't really highlights, or there's not really contrast to worry about too much. But we do have to be careful in case there's a cloud. It'd look weird if it got cut in half. There we go. There we go. And I want to remove the effect on these yellow trees here. You like bright photos like this? Yeah, it's happy. It's a good vibe to be having, especially nowadays. Oh, something's going on upstairs. Just going over these cattail, make sure that I'm not adjusting them too much. The nice thing about these adjustment layers is I can keep adjusting them as long as I don't flatten my image. There we go. There we go. We've really added some depth already to the trees in the background. So next up, I'm going to take a curvature adjustment layer, give us a slight S-curve, but a lot of highlight. There we go. I'm going to use this one on our little happy trees, the little yellow trees. What kind of photography do I prefer? That's a tough one. It depends if you're talking shooting or editing, because with shooting, I really like shooting not necessarily portraits, but people, models, figures. The exception being, like, I'm not a fan of your standard studio model shoot. I prefer dynamic, I prefer action, I prefer outdoors. But as far as editing goes, my favorite is close-ups. Not necessarily macro, but close-up photography of flowers, animals. Things where I can get really nitty-gritty about the details of the specific subject. Whereas with this, I have to focus on... Let me invert that. With this, I have to focus on kind of the picture as a whole, right? With a macro photo of mushrooms or Todd the Chipmunk, I can worry about how an individual hair affects the look of the chipmunk as a whole. And it's just really nice to edit that way. I also love making composites, which is something I don't do often enough. For the record, composites are... they're when you take multiple photos and combine them together to make one full photo. I did one of some friends. We were all hanging out and... let me see how that looks here. I'm actually going to leave this here as well. We were all hanging out at an art crawl and went into a used clothes store and did kind of like a little bit of dress up, a little fashion show, right? And so I shot a photo of the three of them all standing next to each other in like these big fur coats, and like it felt like a family, like an old family portrait. And so I took that photo and threw it in front of an old photo of a old farmhouse, and like adjusted the contrast, adjusted the composition to make it fit. It really came together quite well. It's a lot of creative techniques applied all at once. Let's adjust the hardness of that. Size. There. Nah, screw that. I'm looking at my other screen that's a bit more contrasty. There we go. Sorry for always asking lots of questions. But do you prefer the photography stage or the editing stage? First of all, no worries on the questions. I'm here to hang out and chill and just answer, right? That's another tough question. It really depends. It depends what I'm shooting. It depends my mood. There's some days I just want to go out with a camera and I'll shoot whatever I shoot. There are other days where if I did that, or where if I do that, I feel super uninspired, and it's kind of discouraging, like having a good camera with me and not having that instinct of that composition's beautiful, let me shoot a photo. Other times, this is going to be an in-depth rambly answer. There are other times where I want to do something very specific with my photos. I want to shoot a long exposure, for example, and I can't just... Yeah, I'm liking that depth. I can't just go out with my camera and shoot willy-nilly. I need to bring my tripod. I need to plan what I'm going to shoot. And sometimes that's really frustrating because I just want to, go off like a bullet. I just want to run with it. Other times I love it. It's very precise. It's very calculated. Some of my best photos, I'll pull one up because what else am I doing? One of my favorite photos came from exactly that. Myself and a friend saying, let's go practice cool photo technique. We came up with, I wound up with this. Come on, load in. And I would not have got this photo if I just ran with it, if I just took a camera and shot. This took time, this took patience, this took precision. And so I love doing that. As far as editing goes, I like quick edits. I don't like when I have to spend a whole bunch of hours on any one photo. Like if I were doing this stream the way I normally edit photos, which is I just kind of bang through them and then clean up the really, really good ones, I would have gone through 5 photos by now, which is great. It's a lot of practice, a lot of photos edited. For sake of a stream, I want to go at a bit more of a chill pace. And so I'm actively pushing myself to try new techniques, which is awesome in its own regard. Yeah, like if I had gone out with a camera and not had my friend Maggie bring her photo ball, I would never have got this shot, right? So it's a toss-up. But generally speaking, I'd say I like the photography more than I like the editing. I know that because I have literally 15,000 photos that aren't edited. So I clearly like pressing the shutter button. Okay, do I usually take a photo and then edit it, or do I wait a while till I'm in the mood to edit? Depends on the shoot. Sometimes I'm actually doing work, like I'm being paid for photos, and those I have to turn around quickly, which I have no problem with. There are other times where I go out and shoot and it's like I have 3 shots in my mind that I took that I know I need to edit. Like I just want to see what they look like finished. And so sometimes I'll edit that way. Sometimes that'll be what pushes me to do an edit. A lot of the time I have I'll do the first 20 cool photos that I like. And then after that, I've just got a full library of other photos I took that may or may not be good. A lot of those I'm going through now. And I'll get around to editing them when I do. What's convenient is that this is indeed still more of my hobby than it is my work. I work in other fields, right? And so, what was I doing? Oh yeah, another curve slayer. So I have the luxury of not having to necessarily come up with beautiful photos every day of the week. There we go. It's a bit of an S curve. Then I'm going to do a cool little trick with our mask. I'm going to find my gradient ramp tool. Make sure that my gradient is black to white. And then draw it from the bottom up. Holding shift to make sure it's straight. So now when we move to my mask, it's a gradient. But yeah, yeah, there are some times I just feel inspired and other times not so much. There are also times where I'll be in a bad headspace, because Lord knows I get in those, and to know that, okay, let's start editing some photos and see if that cheers me up. That can be really useful to someone like me who, when I'm not doing work, it's, I don't know if it'll sound, I don't know how this will sound. But like for me, the worst part of school was always summer vacation, because I had nothing to do. I had no structure. I just felt like I was wasting my time. And so to have little projects where I can just pick it up and say, let's make myself useful for a week, has a lot of significance for me. And that's why I like this industry. That's why I like teaching, why I like video, why I like photography, because I can always be doing something. And now I have streaming to add to that, right? So really vague question. Do you have a favorite stage of editing? Are you ever like, oh, I get to do the little painty thing now. Generally with photos, nothing specific is like, I adore doing it. The closest thing I could think of. Let me show you the closest thing I can think of. So I'm going to actually save this one. Save as. I'll just save as swamp.psd. I'll throw it on my D drive so it doesn't take up too much space. And I think that was Royal Botanical. New Brunswick. Niagara Parks. Where's Royal Botanical? There it is. Swamp. So, this is my favorite part of editing. There we go. Save. We'll give that a bit of time because it'll take a bit of time. My favorite part of editing is going into is it Gage Park? Yeah. My favorite part is going through Bridge, which is the program I use to sort all my photos. I can see them all, I can see all the info for them. So I'll go through Bridge and find photos that I love. And then well, you'll see this, you see this one has a little blue guy below it. I'll specifically highlight the ones I like most, which apparently I've done. So then what I do is I go to Tools or View, Sort by Label. So that once all is said and done, I can go back and look at all the cool photos that I can possibly play with. And I'll figure out a way to edit them. These are all blurry right now. They could, it'll come into focus. So like, I'm trying to find one that I haven't already made an edited version. You know what? I haven't played with this one yet. So I'll go through Bridge, go through all my favorite photos. Open one up. And like, I'm going to walk you through pretty much my basic photo editing process. Like, no bells and whistles, no super fancy techniques. Just if I want to quick throw a photo together. Do I like micro photography? I assume you mean macro, and I very much do. I just don't have any good lenses for it. Pardon me a second, I'm going to turn my camera back on. Camera's back. There we go. So I do, assuming you mean macro, yes, I love macro photography. Most of my lenses won't quite get, technically speaking, macro, but at the very least, I love close-up photography. For example, this piece. And so, to answer your question, Layla, this is my favorite part of editing. I love doing all of my edit in camera raw, or practically all of it. So I can adjust things like my exposure, my contrast. I can adjust my highlights. Let's see. Bring my shadows, bring the blacks down. There we go. So immediately, just looking at the before after, we can see a difference. And I've adjusted 5 settings. A weird compliment. Have a really chill, relaxing voice. Be a good audiobook reader. Thank you. Actually, one of my favorite things to do, well, with friends of sorts, is actually reading aloud. Well, ever since I took writer's craft in high school way back when, I've loved reading poetry, reading novels. Reading aloud is definitely something that I like to do. There we go. We got some more purples coming out now. Let's switch back so that we're seeing only the one picture. There we go. But yes, thank you for the compliment. I very much appreciate it. So the cool thing about this is I can really adjust everything. Like I can really drag up my clarity, for example. I can dehaze my photo to bring out some more contrast and color. I can do things like HSL adjustments. All of this is in camera raw. Lucas GG11, hi. Hello, Lucas. Thank you for joining my class. Right now we're just doing some photo editing. And I'm shooting some photos or editing some photos of, I forget what kind of flower. I think they're a lantern flower. So in this setting, I can adjust the hue, saturation, and luminance of any color on the rainbow. So I can change the color of my oranges in the photo, or my greens. Not that there are any greens. I can change up my yellows. In this case, it's saturation, but if I want to change color, I could too. The trick is not to push anything too far, or else it starts to look kind of weird. Also, if you're in chat and have any questions, feel free to shout out. This is a pretty chill stream. I'm more than happy to answer questions. So right now I'm just trying to get a good balance of color because I want to get these purpley magentas really emphasized, but I want them to look bluer. And then our oranges, I want to look a tad more orange. There we go. Let's play with that. Up our vibrance a little bit. Up our saturation a tad. Nothing crazy. There we go. That compared to that. Do I want to look at your photos on Insta? Maybe at some point in a little bit, once I'm done this photo, I'm more than happy to give some opinions on photos. But I would love to get this photo done first. Come on. There we go. So the only other things I might adjust, I'll leave split toning alone. For the record though, split toning is where you take your highlights and your shadows and make them 2 different colors. And then it doesn't really work well on this photo. But think of it like an Instagram filter, the one that's like orange and turquoise. That's split toning. No lens correction. I haven't cropped yet, but I could add a vignette. I won't do a post crop. I'll do a pre crop. There we go. Had a very slight vignette. There we go. So now when I open my image, I do have Instagram. Let me actually toss that up there. Do-do-do. Come on. Let me double check what my Instagram tag is anyway. Okay, it is what I thought. There we go. Let's make it a tad bigger. Okay, that's a tad bigger. So yeah, up top there is my my Instagram tag. Sorry it took so long to adjust. Feel free to follow me. I love posting my photos, and I've been making it a habit of posting photos from stream that I've been editing. In fact, I might go with this one today, funny enough. So now that I'm done in Camera Raw, I've done all sorts of adjustments that would take me a whole lot of time in Photoshop Standard. That said, I can still do one or two things here, like for example, let's use the new technique I've been practicing where we choose a color range. Let's sample some colors until I find the one I'm looking for. Looking for this kind of pinky magenta. There we go. So let's add to it. There we go. All those pinks are good. We will. There we go. So now we've selected everything I want to adjust, and I'm going to go hue saturation layer. And now you'll see when I slide, I only adjust certain items here. And so what I want to do is push things a tad more blue and a bit more saturated. I won't adjust the lightness just because that color is all over the photo and I don't want to mess with that. So now if we look at the layers, turn on and off, there's a lot of work that can be done here. In fact, I'm probably going to leave it for now. But we can essentially select one color and choose to turn it into a different color. Unfortunately, this one's made up of all sorts of colors that are all very, very closely related. When I grab the pink, it grabs the red, and when I grab the red, it grabs the orange. So it can take some time to kind of finagle what you want to adjust. And because I've been going for, well, I've been going for an hour and I'm slowly talking myself into adjusting this photo further. Yeah, screw it. Why not? So, with our mask over here selected, I'm going to switch to a white brush. There we go. I'm going to go with soft, round, pressure, opacity, and flow. And start painting over what I want adjusted. I'm not even going to be particularly delicate with it, because if you notice, I'm just kind of painting generally here at this point. The only thing I should be careful of is the other flowers that I don't want to recolor. So I'll definitely adjust this guy. And once I have this mask painted on as much as I want, then I'll change up the colors. right now I'm not going to worry too much about it. There we go. A little bit of this guy here, but not the one in front of him. This one here definitely can be adjusted. And let's deal with this guy in the corner as well. There, let's see what we can do with this. So, let's double click and try to push this a little bit further. There we go. So if I really push it, we can do all sorts of different colors. I'm just trying to make it a bit more pink and a bit less orange. I won't push the saturation too much, and I will in fact lighten it a little bit because I want to go for pink, not for magenta. So let's see what areas I don't like being adjusted. So I immediately see in here, this guy changes up color and I don't want him to. We have a bit down here. In fact, I'll change this leaf back. But all in all, that's pretty good. I don't like what's happening up here. I'll figure out a way to deal with this guy. So let's quick switch our brush over to black and start painting again on this layer. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'll leave this guy for now. I have another idea on how to deal with him. I'm going to paint with black over the areas I don't like being adjusted. So those leaves down there. Where else didn't I like? Oh, another pop-up. I don't love this flower here being adjusted, so I'm going to draw over it with black. There, that's pretty good. A weird texture coming out of this guy, but I'll deal with it. Let's see if there's anywhere else that I'm not seeing. So what I did was I clicked Alt, or held Alt and clicked on the mask here, just so I can see what the mask looks like just in black and white. Okay, I made one mistake there. I used the wrong color. I used white on this guy. I wanted to use black on this guy. There we go. That's better. And I'm going to adjust the hardness for my brush. There we go. So that way it flows a bit better. Because at this point I'm really chopping out entire sections. So for those who are just tuning in, or have just tuned into chat, how is it going? How are you doing? How are you dealing with well, the COVID-19 stuff and everything that's going on there? Lord knows I've been, well, aside from streaming and classes, which are usual, I've been doing a lot of going outside. I've been going into the park, which is literally my front yard. I've been playing catch with my sister. And then I've also been, well, I've been going for short little walks around the neighborhood and been doing a lot of puzzles. There we go. Let's see what else we need to adjust. So that one's better. I want to fix this again. Did I want to adjust that guy? No. See, all this white here I'm just going to get rid of. Slowly get rid of all that masking. Heyo, we have another popping in. Stuart Kirby TNP. I'm going to call you Stuart just because that's a bit of a mouthful. How's it going? Thank you for popping by the stream. There we go. Turn that on and off. Yeah, I'm liking all these adjustments. There's nothing out here that's standing out like a sore thumb. Except, yeah. The only thing I'm going to adjust is just this one orange leaf over here. Just make sure it's not being affected. Doing good. That is good to hear. Same for me. Between my drinks and my photos, I'm happy. So the only other thing I'm going to adjust is I'm going to create one more new layer. I'm going to go to filter and into blur. I'll choose Gaussian blur. Once I take a actually what I'll do is I'll duplicate this layer, make a normal duplicate, then I'm going to, with this layer, cancel that. I'm going to undraw on one of these, this leaf here that's going all kind of wonky. Let's quick unmask that. That's probably good. Let's see if I can't clean up any of this. There we go. So I've unmasked the one, and then I'm going to my selection tool, select all of that, fill with black. Come on, paint bucket. There we go. Okay, rather than paint bucket it, deselect. We'll just use a big brush. So in this one, the only thing I want to affect is that one leaf that I masked out. For the most part, if I have a little bit of white here or there, it's not too much of a problem. There we go, that's good enough. So with that upper layer selected, what I'm going to do is go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and just up it enough. Yeah, I'd say that works. My goal there is to blur the effect so that it's not quite as blotchy as it was, which seems to have worked. Maybe not the most successfully, but it managed. Also my layers. There we go. I might actually filter with that layer selected. More Gaussian blur. There we go, a bit better. You know what? I'm going to leave it as is. I'm going to delete that layer entirely. There we go. So I adjusted my colors slightly so everything's a bit more pink. And with that, I'm just going to adjust my image size. Actually, first I'll crop it. I'll crop it to 4:5 is the most Instagram friendly. Let's see if I got some good framing here. I don't mind that too much. So cropping it to 4:5, I'm going to go to image size. Then bring that down to 75. Let's go to 150. Make the height 1080. There we go. So that'll only just fit an Instagram, technically, of sorts. Yeah, we'll convert the color profile to sRGB so that it works best for the internet. We will save this guy as, let's call it flowers. No worries, Layla. You can come and go as you please. But, yeah, so that's what we wound up with from, let's see the unadjusted. Can't see the number on that guy. Basically, this is one of its sister images. But basically, from something like this, we managed to get that. And that's the cool part about editing to me, is in the span of half an hour turning a photo from something okay into something really pretty. So for those of you who did follow me on Instagram, which is what's up top of the display right now, you'll probably see either this photo or my Todd photo, which I should open up again. You'll see those on my Instagram. Here comes Todd. There we go. Isn't he a cutie? Stuart, to answer your question, how am I finding Twitch? I'm, in fact, loving it a fair bit. It's super useful for all my classes, the actual ones I get paid to do, teaching my students. And then as far as this kind of thing, it's relaxing, to say the least. And to be able to connect with random, well, for lack of a better term, random people. To be able to just chat with whoever may come across the stream is pretty cool. But, yeah, in the near future, I'll be hopefully turning this into something a bit more than just the occasional stream. I'm hoping to get, a Discord going and hopefully get to affiliate at one point. And maybe turn this into something a bit more. Aren't. So, let me move that guy again. I'm also going to resize it slightly. There we go. It's a bit prettier. Aren't is my last name. Technically it means eagle in Old German. But yeah, so well, in the case of my name here on Twitch, Chris Arndt, instructor, my name is Chris Arndt and I'm an instructor and apparently very creative at coming up with usernames. As far as my photography goes, This Aren't Photography is just a play on how you pronounce my name. Stuart, the photo community on here is fairly small but decent. Yeah, my friend Brianna actually mentioned last stream that I should look at streaming into art rather than streaming into just chatting, and I definitely have no regrets. Lucas in chat. But yeah, I'm hoping to get to know the community a bit better as I keep editing photos, keep working on other things. Layla, oh, I thought ARM was an acronym. Yeah, no, it's not an acronym. That's just my name. Nice and German, almost all consonants. But yeah, while I've got a few of you here who aren't just like friends from like IRL, how are we liking the format? Should I keep doing photos? Do you want me to delve into video editing, animation, anything like that? Like even graphic design. My skills are not just limited to photos, but I definitely love editing photos. Oh, got a follower on Instagram. That's nice. Pardon me. But yeah. Yeah, I'm going to switch to cam for a bit. Layla, enjoying the photo editing, which makes me happy. You've tuned in for 3 streams at this point, so I'm glad you're enjoying it. I think I might start to mix my photo editing with some video editing as well, because that's, well, A, it's my job, and B, it's definitely a passion of mine. I have some old footage laying around I'd love to cut together. Funny enough, you were talking before about visiting Canada. I have a video I've been wanting to cut together from when I went to. Give me 1 second. I'll pull up the Instagram again. Where would I? Oh, I have it saved on another thing. Cam. Come on. There we go. I'll leave that there for now. But yeah, I have a video from when I took a trip to New Brunswick of the St. John's Farmers Market that I shot, and I really want to get around to editing it. Stuart, photography on Twitch in general has been around since 2014. Back then it was strictly gaming. Around 2015 they brought in music. A few months later, creative. Yeah, I definitely know of creative streaming a little bit. Follow like Rubber Ninja, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's been nice to delve into it. Lucas, yeah, definitely I'll check out your Instagram. Maybe give you some constructive criticism on your photos. But yeah, it's cool getting to know people. 2014, 2015, it was a case of anything outside of that was immediate ban. Yeah, I'm very lucky it's not that way anymore, or else I wouldn't be able to have my classes on here. Never mind my normal stream. You can just drop your @ or if you want to drop the link, that's cool. I don't think I have links blocked currently in chat. You wrote it out. I definitely, in fact, I'm going to take note. What kind of stuff are you streaming? What's your jam, Stuart? I figure at this point we're just doing more of a chat and stream, less of the editing. Mostly press. Oh, okay, photojournals. Okay. Well, I'm a journalism grad myself. definitely not working professionally in journalism at the moment. Ooh, that's a mouthful, Lucas. I'll plug it in, take a look. Yes, Layla, I saw you followed me. I saw that pop up. You and someone else called Worms, which is a sick username. Yeah, let me, I'm gonna pop up Instagram on my browser. That way I don't have to be staring at my phone during all of this. Right now, you're getting your new kit in order. What do you shoot on, Stuart? I myself, I shoot on, I've got my Sony A7R II, which is also my webcam right now. That thing was the best investment I ever made. So let's get Instagram up. There we go. Exit out of Photoshop so my computer stops lagging down. Right now, a D3 D750. Soon to be dual D750. Damn, I envy you. That's for sure. I'm definitely more in the realm of Sony right now, personally. But before that, I was shooting Canons. I was shooting on a Canon Rebel T6, so nothing too fancy. On the 15th, getting my 7. Oh man, I wish I could spring for any sort of kit of that magnitude. Right now, the only thing I have for lenses on my Sony, I have my kit lens, my 3570. And then I got Sony's version of the Nifty 50, which honestly I don't love as much as I hoped I would. But I really want to get myself a zoom lens, or they have there's a Zeiss 90mm macro lens that I would literally kill someone for if I could. Had to repair 2470 2.8 because of the rubber and the zoom grip came off. Yeah, my one kit lens, the rubber is slowly being stripped, just because the camera body's so small that my tripod mount, the button that pops up from it keeps cutting into it. Before I keep talking about photography though, let's look up Lucas Leander. Man. There we go, found it. That's a hell of a username. Damn. Definitely no criticism needed on Lucas's Instagram. And of course, I'm going to drop a follow. Yeah, I love some of these shots. Lucas, if you're still in chat, where are you shooting out of? Like, where are you local to? Because some of the landscapes you're shooting are really nice. Based on the windmill, I'd guess Holland, but Lord knows. But yeah, so my kit's interesting because my kit's built for photography and videography all at once. So like I invested in stabilizers long before I invested in my good camera. So it's kind of a kit bash together. Okay, Denmark, yes. I had to look up the town. Yeah, I am loving some of your photos here. What, if I may ask, what do you shoot on, Lucas? I was also going to look at... Might as well take a look at Layla's account. Well, I'm here. Some solid photos here. And definitely considering, Layla, assuming you're still in chat, considering that you're editing primarily just on free program, like free software that you can get your hands on, not bad as far as the editing goes. OnePlus 7T, now a 550D. Not bad. Like, I'm definitely jealous of your abilities. I don't hold myself to quite... I don't necessarily consider myself that skilled. Editing and video are definitely more my jam. But, yeah, I envy you your talents and your beautiful photos, Lucas. But, with that, I think I'm going to call it for today's stream. I'm just breaking 2 hours at this point. I have a long day ahead of me teaching class tomorrow, and I haven't eaten since breakfast. So, thank you all who are in chat and who have taken off at this point. Thank you all for joining me and sitting through some photo editing. Feel free to follow me on Instagram just above my head here. There we go. And feel free to follow me here on Twitch. I stream every Wednesday at 5, as well as odd classes here and there. So with that, I hope you all have a good day. I hope you all stay safe with what's going on. I hope you all stay informed, and I hope you all keep washing your hands and social distancing. Thank you once again for joining me. Have a good one.
I think it all, I got a lot to say. Change my mind a million ways. I think it all until it drops away. All I do is hide my face. I think it all, I got a lot to say.